Reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues tempt me to wander afield from what we've come here to talk about, since they want to talk about seemingly everything else. So let me try to respond to a few of the points that have just been lobbed in our direction. First, they seem to want to assign responsibility to the President of the United States for the inflation rate, but then surely they will assign responsibility to the President of the United States for the unemployment rate, which now stands at around 3.5%, the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. You got to go back a half century to find the kind of job situation that President Biden has brought to the United States of America. Last week, we learned that payroll employment is up by 315,000 in the month of August alone. Since President Biden came into office, we have added 668,000 manufacturing jobs. Now, it's true the president has been fighting inflation ever since he got into office. Why? Well, the economy started to come roaring back, not just in America, but all over the world in the wake of the pandemic. And so we saw tremendous demand with broken supply chains. And so what happens under the law of supply and demand? The prices go up. But unlike our colleagues who seem to want to chortle about it and use it as a campaign talking point, President Biden and the Democrats have been acting to bring inflation down every single day. Yesterday's Consumer Price Index data show continued progress in bringing global inflation down here in the U.S. economy. Gas prices are down an average of $1.30 a gallon since the beginning of the summer. Price increases slowed at the grocery store this month, still too high. But real wages went up again for a second month in a row, giving hardworking families more breathing room. It's amazing to me that some of the time has been delegated to one of our distinguished colleagues who seem to want to blame these global economic conditions arising from COVID-19 and the pandemic and broken supply chains, as well as Vladimir Putin's filthy imperialist war in Ukraine, which fortunately the people of Ukraine, with the support of a lot of people in this body, but not everybody, is starting to win. And we've seen dramatic reversal of fortune in that war as the democratic forces are beating Vladimir Putin and the autocrats in Russia. But in any event, we just heard someone who wanted to blame all of these global economic conditions on an SEC regulation, which we're not here to discuss, and therefore, unfortunately, I can't address. I might agree with the gentleman for all I know. It's got nothing to do with the legislation before us, and it's hard for me to believe that that's the source of inflation around the world or the unemployment, which now is practically at the bottom level that we've ever seen over a century. But in any event, Mr. Speaker, back to the point at hand, I thought we were going to be distracted with Republican calls to ban abortion across the country. Well, the polls must be teaching them something, because I'm not hearing about abortion today. For many years, all I heard from them was abortion is murder. And the millions of millions of persons who are being murdered by abortion. And they demanded the overthrow of Roe versus Wade, and they got their way. And yesterday, Senator Lindsey Graham introduced legislation for a national criminal ban on abortion. But of course, the so-called pro-life forces want to go further in the states and ban it completely. A lot of them don't even want to allow exceptions for rape or incest. I thought our colleagues were going to explain what their position really is. I would invite them to do so, as long as they don't want to talk about the legislation before us today. Why don't they tell us what their position on abortion is? Because America wants to know. I think their position has changed somewhat. They're singing a somewhat different tune since the people of Kansas, by 20 points, destroyed their anti-choice agenda and explained to them in numerical terms that the people of America are on the side of freedom and the rights of women and men and families to make their own decisions, and not to have those decisions being made by Lindsey Graham, one senator who yesterday pronounced that he chose 15 weeks as the right point to criminalize abortion. He chose that himself. And, well, what is their position now? America wants to know. What is their position? Do they support a national criminal ban on abortion? Are they going to allow any exceptions for rape or incest? What is their position on it if they don't want to talk about the legislation at hand? Meantime, the Democrats continue to fight for lower drug prices, for a record, unprecedented, historic investment in renewable energy. We are addressing the problems of the future. At the same time, we are defending the integrity of the federal civil service and our workforce, which was compromised and abused in so many ways by the last administration. We are defending the rights of whistleblowers to tell the truth about what's taking place in terms of political and public corruption, and not to have to face retaliation from their supervisors. And we are defending the institutions of democracy, including the census, against all of the kinds of machinations and corruption and political abuse that we saw in the last administration. And we're glad that the Supreme Court struck down their last interference with the census by trying to paste questions on outside of the rule of law on the short form. And this legislation is designed to protect the integrity of the census, along with the civil service, along with the whistleblowers. But as long as my dear colleagues and friends don't want to talk about the legislation at hand, please clarify for America what their plan is to take away the health rights of American women and their families. Are they supporting the plan we heard yesterday announced by Lindsey Graham for a nationwide federal criminal ban? And I will reserve the remainder of my time.